One of the best feelings, at least for me, is connecting the gamepad you bought and of course playing a game on your mobile with it. This currently represents much more of a console experience within the Android gaming industry, and it's even better when the game is offline. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today, so if you want to know the best ones to play on your gamepad, just drop a like and come with me. A simulation game for you to end up playing for 100 hours straight. Let's talk now about Potion Permit. One very interesting part is that this game doesn't have a story mode for your character. Instead, you're going to follow the stories of the characters you meet during your journey. Just to give you an idea, your character doesn't even have a name. And well, after creating your character, you go to the small town of Moonberry. When you get there, your goal is to make some potions to cure some of the sick people. The problem is that the last alchemist who tried to do this went very wrong in the town, so you arrive with some distrust. The game has some different gameplay elements like making the potion, which is a puzzle, but for example, it also gives you an open world to explore and a lot of story mode. I remember that when this game was released, a lot of people didn't give it a chance just because it was 2D. Let's talk now about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Very different from the Prince of Persia games that were released a long time ago. This one is a 2D format, very similar to a Metroidvania. I don't remember exactly what the name of the character is, but he has a mission to take a lost king from one place to another. The problem is that he's going to pass through the middle of a war in a place where almost nobody survives. Besides that, you have several other characters to help you in battles and a very interesting setting, but one of the main parts is definitely the movement of your character and also the combat, which is very similar to a hack and slash. This is one of the great Android games, and of course it's much better with a gamepad. Red Dead Redemption is definitely one of the best. The real challenge is seeing if it's actually going to work on your phone, and we're going to talk about it now.
When I was just a little girl.
For those who don't know, this is a port from Xbox 360, and it was a huge success when it was released for Android. The game has its original version, which you can buy on the Rockstar Play Store, and it also has the Netflix version, which works in a slightly cheaper way. And for those who have never seen it, you're going to play as a character named Arthur, hunting down his former companions in an attempt to save his family. The game has a very interesting story mode that is praised to this day, and it also has an open world for you to explore and many other things besides the story for you to do. Now, this is such a crazy game that it's even difficult to put it into a category, but anyway, you probably already know it. Let's talk now about Slime Hunter. The main goal of the game is to put the slime balls, as you can see, in the same place with the same color, right? And not only that, but you also need to feed them and kind of take care of them as if they were animals. All the colors have favorite things to eat and also a right way for you to take care of them. And I need to tell you, I tried playing the game, but I just can't find the fun in it. I don't know, but it's definitely one of the most anticipated ports on the Play Store, and it's currently doing pretty well. It's worth playing. If there's one game on the entire Play Store that you really need to play with a gamepad, this is definitely the one. Let's talk now about Tomb Raider. There are currently 3 Tomb Raider games on the Play Store, and this is just one of them. This one is basically its PlayStation version remastered and putting the 3 together for you, right? And well, part of the remaster is very good because, my friend, if it wasn't for that, graphically this game would be very strange. Besides being graphically strange, its gameplay is also weird. It's a little difficult to get used to, and it's an extremely difficult game. It really feels like the game was made for you to keep losing, but with a gamepad it helps a little more. I never really liked Lara Croft or Tomb Raider that much, but there's my recommendation for you. If you like Metal Slug, you're going to love this game, so let's talk now about HUNTDOWN. The game takes place in a dystopian and cybernetic future after a third world war that destroyed the nations and handed power over to greedy mega corporations. Now it's up to your character to try to bring some balance to the world. The story is really just a backdrop for you to shoot in every direction, and honestly it works very well. The game looks a lot like Metal Slug or something similar to Contra, where basically everything wants to kill you and you need to dodge literally everything. However, that cyberpunk aesthetic always ends up making things much better, and this game is no different. It looks very beautiful because of that. One funny thing about this game is that it's also a mobile port, but it's definitely the port that took the longest since it's a 2011 game. Let's talk now about Hyper Light Drifter. Honestly, I really like this graphic style and also the gameplay. The graphics and its isometric format work really well with the highly fluid gameplay. In the game, you play as a character who is suffering from a disease that has no cure, so a legend about something that could cure him ends up appearing and he goes in search of this cure. They say the game's story is really interesting, but without a doubt, if I had to say what's most important about the game, I'd say the gameplay. There are several enemies for you to defeat and a lot of puzzles to solve. This game has finally been officially released for Android, well actually re-released, alright? Let's talk now about Max Payne. The game was poorly optimized and only worked on less powerful phones, so it barely appeared on the Play Store. A lot of people didn't even know this game existed. For those who don't know the game, you play as a character named Max, a detective, and he starts investigating some pretty serious things involving gangs and even corrupt politicians. This ends up affecting his family. His wife and also his daughter are killed, and he leaves his job as a detective to get revenge. After that, my friend, all you have to do is start shooting every kind of villain that comes your way. The game has some really cool gameplay. It's basically a port of the PS1, which is still very worth playing today. This is a very interesting game for you if you enjoy something more relaxing. Let's talk now about Moonstone Island. The game doesn't have a very in-depth story. You play as an alchemist traveling the world to seek knowledge, so you'll end up visiting several different locations and helping people, but the game has various mechanics. For example, one of the mechanics is the spirit system, which consists of some monsters that you can collect very much in the Pokemon style. You can battle with them, but the card game is what really stands out. Besides that, your character needs to sleep and eat, you can talk to NPCs, and you can even get a girlfriend in this game. Like I said, there's a lot of random stuff for you to do in this game. This is a game that's forgotten there inside the Play Store, but it's really worth it because of its gameplay. Let's talk now about Pepper Grinder. The story of this game is kind of similar to the story of Super Mario, where you have a big villain. Either he is evil or he wants to destroy the world and you need to stop him. That's because it also works as a somewhat normal platforming system, but as you go through it, you control a child with a drill, and that's the entire mechanic of the game. She moves around with this drill in a different way through the sand, and this works both for moving around and for defeating enemies. And believe me, my friend, this is really good. When you actually manage to play it properly, you don't want to stop anymore. I played this game because I honestly love management games. Let's talk now about Easy Delivery Co. You can insult me, but I love the game's art style. It's very weird and it ends up matching the horror system of the game quite well. You arrive in a completely different city with the goal of getting some money, so basically you end up working there as a delivery driver. And this part is simple, man. There are some things for you to deliver. You travel around the city delivering them slowly, but then the game starts to have some very weird things happening, and that's where the whole horror system comes in. Strange characters, maps that never seem to end, and some very weird noises coming from your truck. I honestly love this game. I thought it had a brilliant story. Let's talk about a horror game called Forgotten Memories. In the game, you play as a character named Rose. She's a detective, an investigator, something like that, looking for a missing child. However, we don't know exactly what happened. She woke up covered in blood inside a very strange house that looks a lot like her childhood. After that, she needs to investigate how she ended up there and also where the child she's looking for is. The game has a very different horror atmosphere compared to the normal horror games you find on the Play Store. Besides that, it also has a much more slow-paced combat mechanic than usual. The only downside of the game, and I need to tell you this, is that the game lasts a maximum of 2 hours. This game finally came back to the Play Store. It ended up disappearing. I don't know what happened. Let's talk now about Forgotten Anne. This is a very old game that would usually get lost there inside the Play Store, and you play as Anne. She is the guardian of the world of the forgotten, where all the objects that usually fall under the bed or something similar end up. However, we don't know exactly who is doing this, but they are encouraging the objects to start a great rebellion, so now it's up to Anne, or you who controls her, to find out what exactly is happening. Besides its great story mode, and they say it's actually very good, the game focuses entirely on puzzles, where you need to solve several different puzzles in order to progress through the story. I almost made it to the end of this game and it's really impressive. Let's talk now about Greek Memories of Azur. In the game, you play as a different species, kind of like some elves who live peacefully in their lands until some orcs ended up invading the place and bringing terror to everything. So you have your main protagonist and his 2 missing siblings, and your goal is to find them and also find a new place where you can rebuild your family. One very interesting part is that you start playing with one character, then you end up finding the little girl along the way, and throughout the game you end up playing with both of them. Yes, you need to control both and it's very difficult, but this is also one of the main points of the game, and of course when the third brother appears, that's when things get way too complicated. And if there's really an impressive game that everyone should play, especially with a gamepad, let's talk now about HAAK. To summarize the game's story very well, you play as a character who is looking for his missing brother, and you discover that he ended up getting involved with gangs. But it's worth remembering that the world of this game was already pretty destroyed because of that. Well, you're also going to get involved in a lot of wrong things, but with the goal of eventually looking for your brother GREAK, the game can also be considered a Metroidvania. However, I need to tell you that it's much more focused on a platforming system than action, with only a few enemies for you to defeat, and I would even say that it's better to play the game with a gamepad, because in many of the stages you're going to need to slide 20 times and jump 20 more. This game managed to do something that's almost impossible, be a good game in story mode while also being a good roguelike. Let's talk about Children of Morta. Unlike many other games, here you're going to play with an entire family, and they are the Bergson family. I don't remember exactly, but there must be around 7 or 8 different characters for you to play with, which are generally the RPG classes. The story of the game is that corruption has gotten out of control, and now it's basically dropping monsters everywhere, so you need to enter dungeons and discover what exactly is happening. But the interesting thing is that the game doesn't have a linear story. You can keep entering dungeons infinitely to level up your character, or you can just follow the story. I ended up trying to play this game here, and it kept asking for blood, and I ended up failing a lot. That's because the gameplay is very fluid. Let's talk now about Dark Sword, A Light of AIIN. The game takes place in a ruined kingdom covered by a tragic history of sadness and devastation. The monarch left powerful guardians scattered throughout the lands of Calistine to pay for his crimes. The player takes on the role of the wielder, the owner of the sword capable of defeating brutal bosses. The truth is that a lot of the story ends up working, but the best part is definitely the gameplay. One interesting thing is that, but just like the story says, there are only gigantic bosses in this game for you to fight. There aren't those small creatures for you to defeat. It's only bosses, and all of them are very difficult. Yeah, I know that just by looking at this game, you already know exactly how it works, but seriously, it's much better than it looks. Let's talk now about Dokimon. The game is basically a Pokemon copy in its purest essence. You're going to create your character and choose one of the 3 starter Pokemon, but of course the game also has a lot of different things, like some different characters with their own story that you can follow, not just your character. Besides that, the game has around 7 different worlds for you to explore, more than 25 hours of gameplay, and 140 Dokimons for you to collect. They say the game's story is a little more tragic than Pokemon's, and honestly, it seems like a good game to me. If there's a platform or a lost console somewhere, there's definitely a Dragon Quest on it, and let's talk now about Dragon Quest: The Dark Prince. Yeah! Unfortunately, I'm not the biggest expert on this game's story, but from everything I could understand, this time you play as the villain. He was cursed by his father, and because of that he can't fight. So he ends up using some monsters that he captures, and yes, for those of you who thought about it, it's basically Pokemon in the Dragon Quest world. There are several iconic monsters from the Dragon Quest series that you can add to your team and battle with. Other than that, it looks a lot like those more traditional Japanese RPGs, but with this big difference: it's a turn-based RPG. This game is for you if you enjoy those RPGs where you can do anything. Let's talk now about DROVA, Forsaken Kin. The most interesting part about this game is exactly the freedom it gives you. You play as a character and you can be whatever you want, from a hero to just a mercenary who wants a lot of money. And it's not just about your character choice, and there's also the main story where you can decide which path you want to follow, and even your character's class or abilities. It's that type of game that doesn't look like much, but it's extremely well made and has a lot for you to do in this game. They say that to explore the entire game, you need to finish it at least 3 times. A port that honestly took quite a long time to finally be released on the Play Store. But let's talk now about AZUR. This game also works as a monster catching game, but it's completely different from the Pokemon we're used to. It's much more focused on action and a very interesting synergy system. To be honest, this is another game that I don't know much about the story. All I know is that there's a great villain wanting to conquer all the monsters, which are usually peaceful. Unlike Pokemon, which is a turn-based RPG, here you end up summoning your monsters and battling in real time, and you can have up to 3 on the battlefield. Besides that, it's a more isometric format, which looks a lot like an RPG, really stands out, and it's a very different game. It's worth trying. It's incredible how this game doesn't get more popular on the Play Store, and I don't know exactly why, but anyway, let's talk about Afterimage. If you know the complete story of this game or a summarized version that's easy to understand, leave a comment below for me because I played a good part of it and my friend, what a confusing story. Unlike many other Metroidvania games, this one ends up having much more of a focus on combat and also platforming. The game's combat is what really stands out. It looks a lot like hack and slash, but at the same time it has platforming systems where if you don't know how to play, you'll probably fall into a hole many times. It's a great game, especially for you if you enjoy a story mode, and it's definitely worth getting to know. This is a management game with a very interesting combat mechanic. Let's talk now about Ball X Pit. And well, the combat mechanic I mentioned that is interesting is basically a roguelike in a style that kind of looks like a pinball game. I don't know if you're familiar with this style of game. The focus is on not letting the characters get close to you while you keep defeating and evolving your character as you kill the monsters. Of course, there will come a time when you'll eventually lose, and then you enter the management system, which is almost like city building. This is another game that I don't know much about its story. Honestly, I don't even think it has one, and it has some very addictive systems. I'm currently playing this game specifically on a gamepad, which makes everything better. Let's talk now about Blue Fire. From what I can understand about the game's story, you play as a character who somehow ended up inside a huge castle and he doesn't know his name, where he came from, or what he's doing there. So now it's up to you to investigate this. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but the game can also be considered a Metroidvania. The maps are connected, the way you play works exactly like one, and even the progression system is very similar. However, honestly, I don't know if we could really classify this game as a Metroidvania simply because the game is completely in 3D. Yeah, I know you probably weren't expecting this game here, but let's talk now about SpongeBob Comic Shake. And well, don't expect a great story mode from this game since nothing in the game makes much sense, especially not compared to the cartoon. SpongeBob and Patrick ended up wishing for something very dangerous that is destroying Bikini Bottom. Now he needs to team up with several other characters from the cartoon to restore Bikini Bottom to the way it normally is. This is a good adventure game, let's put it that way. There isn't much combat, but it's that kind of platforming game that is usually very difficult to finish. And of course, it's extremely well made. It's worth playing. Another game that you could consider pretty premium on our list because it's very good graphically and also in terms of gameplay. Let's talk now about Bright Memory Mobile. In this game, you play as a character named Sandra. She's part of a kind of police force, but an elite police force, and she needs to investigate what's happening on a small island near Japan. When she gets there, she discovers that time is distorted. People from the past are there, people from the future, as well as people from other countries investigating what's happening there. Besides its FPS combat, Sandra has several powers that can help you a lot, like telekinesis, the sword she uses, and the game has some really good action to play. And that's it for today. I hope you found at least one game worth playing. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.